Welcome to Thursday Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jesse Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. This week, I'm speaking with Kelley Jones, principal of Kelley Jones Hospitality, which focuses on F&B operations for on-premise venues, and president and CEO of Hospitality Alliance, a hospitality management, development, and consulting firm for the on-premise world from start to finish. He started out at Pussers Rum and helped grow and open several locations, which was the precursor to his career in the restaurant business. He had just opened his 106th restaurant at the time of our recording in September of 2023. He then jumped over to China Grill Management for nearly 5 years as Director of Development and Operations. Kelley has had many experiences in the on-premise world, including being president of Light Group, where he dipped his toe into nightlife establishments. Kelley is so ingrained into the business and operation side. If I were to open a new concept, he'd be my very first phone call. He's buttoned up on every level, from concepting, funding, understanding the brick-and-mortar development, to operations. When it comes to cocktails on their menu, he lets the bartender create one for each spirit, but they have to be made within 30 seconds. Those of you looking for advice on restaurant management, you don't want to miss this episode. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Welcome, everybody, to Thursday Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am Jesse Ott, and I have Kelley Jones here with Kelley Jones Hospitality. Hi, Kelley. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Where are you calling from?
I am in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I'm based.
Ah, gotcha. Nice. That's a nice place to be. A lot of
No,
action.
I love living here. I moved here in 1998 to open Mandalay Bay. Kicking and screaming said I'd go for 1 year, and I ended up here for 5, left for 4, and been back for 18 now.
Well, it is like the culinary capital, or at least a major culinary capital for the U.S., the world.
Oh, absolutely. And, it was great to watch it grow. When I moved here, Mandalay Bay had just opened, and they said that Mandalay Bay had topped it out. There wasn't going to be any more room for hotel or restaurant growth, and we opened Mandalay Bay and proved everybody wrong. But this was before Paris, Planet Hollywood, City Center,
Yeah.
Aria, Wynn, Encore, Venetian, Palazzo. I mean, nothing was here.
Wow.
When I moved here, there were 800,000 people. Now there's 2.3 million.
Wow. So you've seen a lot of change and a lot of growth. So do you know Tony Abou-Ganim?
Love Tony. Yep, great friend.
Yeah, I interviewed him earlier on the in the year, and you could just tell he's such a great man, a great human, and does a lot of great things. It's a great
Yeah,
story.
Tony's one of the good guys for sure.
Yeah, he's so sweet. He sent me some of his bar tools, and I love it. I I just love it. They're so much fun to use. Like, you feel a little bit, like you kind of know what you're doing now.
Well,
It's
Tony, he's done some great things. He created the entire opening beverage program at the Bellagio, and in fact, I've hired him a couple times over the years to do beverage training for my teams.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's like actually a really good idea, because that's what he does, right? I mean,
Yep.
he's been doing it a long time. No, he's a great guy. So where are you originally from?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey. That's where I started in the restaurant business. 14 years old, washing dishes in a Greek diner, and I worked
Okay.
there throughout my 4 years of high school. But then I ended up leaving right after high school, and gosh, I've been blessed. I've lived all over the world.
Wow. I always wanted to do that. I always thought I
Oh,
would.
I didn't get married till I was 42. I had, God's got a great sense of humor, and I had my first child at 51, who's now 8 years old. And,
Oh,
so I was, I wasn't really good in school. In fact, I graduated 258 out of 262 because I didn't learn the way they educate, which
yep.
is orally and visually. I'm a kinesthetic learner. So
Yeah.
that's why the restaurant and hospitality business is so great, is because it's show do. So, I went, the traditional route, dishwasher, busboy, prep cook, line cook, sous chef, executive chef. And when I was a chef, it was before, gosh, I left the kitchen in the early 90s. And that was before, food TV, celebrity chefs, and all that. And,
Yep.
and it's funny because I tell people all the time, oh, yeah, I used to be a chef. I'm like, oh, wow, you were a chef? Not one time when I was a chef did anybody say, oh, wow, you're a chef? Because back then, chefs were considered tradesmen, like electrician or a plumber. And now, it's cool to be in the restaurant business because, 20 years ago, it's like you're in the restaurant business until you can get a real job. And now, there's a lot of credibility to hospitality. And I think it's, a wonderful industry to be in.
Well, it's just so amazing, the offerings and the options and the innovation that have come through has been amazing, right? Like, I mean, and you have all these infusions and different flavors, and it's an experience that everybody really enjoys, and I think it's upped its game the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, maybe even 20 years, and it keeps
Oh, I think
evolving.
it's always, yeah, it's always evolving. I mean, you look back in, the turn of the century, the Escoffier times and the innovations he was doing, but, Escoffier is still taught in every major culinary school today. So, there's a certain, principles and fundamentals of
Yeah.
cooking that don't change. And, as a chef, you kind of get really, artsy and craftsy and start adding a lot of things, and then as I think you hone your craft, you realize that it's the individual ingredients and the quality of the ingredients that are the most important thing.
Yeah, 100%. So, I guess you started in the business in high school then, and you just kind of stayed with the restaurant side of the world and the more the on the food side then.
Well, I left the kitchen in the 90s and then became a general manager. And then from there, a multi unit director. And from there, a vice president and then a president of companies. And then 17 years ago, I went out on my own. So I have three different companies now, all in the hospitality sector. One is a company that operates three ramen restaurants, two in Colorado and one in Vermont. And I've got another company that is more of a management company. And that company is Hospitality Alliance, where we focus on primarily food halls and hotel food and beverage operations. And then, my company, Kelley Jones Hospitality, which everything flows into, is operations and consulting. I never got into it, to consult because we always laughed at consultants. They were people that couldn't get a real job.
Uh-huh.
But, consulting, it's lucrative. And, I get, we brought in a lot of times to do turnarounds of, challenged operations and, often brought in to get operations up and running. In fact, we've been working for the last 18 months with Full House Gaming, working and creating concepts for a property they have just north of Chicago, in a big casino that they have there. So, we've got a couple of Airstreams, a coffee and a bar Airstream, a main casino bar, and then three restaurants.
Oh, wow. So you are quite busy and have lots of lots of different concepts, which I guess is kind of fun to to have a variety of different kinds of foods and offerings for consumers.
Well, that's what keeps it fresh and fun.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the same thing. In fact, our ramen shops are the only concepts that we have that are multiple of the same. Other than that, every other one is a one-off.
So, what are some of the venues of your food halls? Are they around the world or just in the country? Or
No, just in the country, down in Dallas, working on a food hall in Napa, California. We were engaged before COVID on three other food halls, but we've done a lot of stuff here in Vegas. We master planned the food hall at the Uncommons, which is a mixed use restaurant retail community that opened in the west side of the valley. And ironically, right across the street, we master planned the food hall at the soon to open Durango Stations with Stations Casino.
oh wow, very cool. So, how have you been very active with the various casinos in Vegas? I mean, since you've seen it kind of grow up and evolve, have you been pretty
Yeah,
pretty
well, I
involved
mean,
in
I
them?
moved here. I moved here to open Mandalay Bay, and I was there for 5 years. We had four concepts back when we opened Mandalay Bay in 1999. A restaurant that turned into a nightclub called Rum Jungle, Red Square, China Grill. I worked for China Grill Management for 5 years and
Okay.
opened 26 restaurants over those 5 years
Oh,
for them
geez.
all over the world. So Mexico City, London, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Miami, and here in Vegas.
So did you move around while those locations were opening?
No, I
Did you?
just, my base was here. When you say where do I live, I live on American Airlines. My stuff is here in Vegas. So I
Yeah.
travel a lot. For the last 30 years, I've been on the road, typically about 50% of the time.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot
But,
of time on the
but I
road.
love what I do. So it's fun. I love what I
Yeah.
do. It's not fun now having an 8-year-old. I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine, doing this without FaceTime, because at least I get to talk to him every morning and every night. But, I mean, I now am at a point where I'm not going for 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month, or two at a time. I'm sending other people,
Yep.
so, typically, unless it's an opening where I'm there for a couple of weeks, I'm only there for a few nights.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I understand. That makes total sense, especially when they're that young and then they're going to start getting busy in sports or music or activities or something, and you want to kind of be around for that. So I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. So where have you so you've been based in Vegas, but you've never lived more than a month or so anywhere else. Where else have you opened concepts around the world?
Well, so, I've opened concepts in London. We did 2 hotel restaurants there, Mexico City. But I've lived in my life. After I left New Jersey, I traveled in a van behind this little band called the Grateful Dead for a couple of years,
You
and we
didn't.
always got yeah we got always got jobs in restaurants because restaurants are always hiring and you could
Yep.
eat for free. And when you live in a van, eating for free is a really good perk. So I ended up in Pensacola, Florida for a year, and then down to Key West, Florida for 2 years, and then up to New York City. From New York City, I lived in from 90 to 98. I lived in the U.S. Virgin Islands for a year and a half, and then for 6.5 years in the British Virgin Islands, working for a rum company called Pussers Rum, where we had a bunch of restaurants around the world. And then from there, I ended up moving back and taking about 8 months off and lived in Charleston, South Carolina, and then
Nice.
ended up moving to Las Vegas to open Mandalay Bay. And in 2003, I was recruited by Kimpton Hotels. I moved to San Francisco and was vice president of restaurant operations for Kimpton Hotels for 2 years. And then Steven Starr out of Philadelphia recruited me to be his VP of Ops to grow him out of Philadelphia. So we opened Budokan and Morimoto in New York City. We opened Budokan and Continental in Atlantic City. And then the Light Group, who I knew the owners, approached me to move back to Las Vegas as president of the Light Group, which is a restaurant, nightlife, lifestyle company. That is no longer. They've been purchased, and after 9 months with them, I had the opportunity to open my first restaurant, and so I left in 2008, and I've been on my own ever since.
Oh wow, what did you open?
I opened a restaurant called Sweet and Tender, which is a softer, more feminine approach to a steakhouse in San Diego in the Gaslamp district.
What do you mean by feminine?
It was a softer approach. So when I say a feminine approach, it's less large, large. We had more composed plates, so it wasn't a big hunk of steak, and then you have to order your sides and pay more for it. So the check average was a little bit lower. It was more composed plates. It was certainly meat focused, but it was more thoughtfully laid out. So and we did all kinds of things, not just steak. So we had a lot of pork and duck and chicken and other meats, short ribs, oxtails.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. I don't think that there's too many of those concepts even out there now. You know,
Well, I think anytime you do a restaurant, you have to every restaurant does 95% of everything the same way, right? So you have to figure out that 5%, what I call the memorable moments. What are the things that you're doing that nobody's ever seen before, that nobody's ever done before? And it doesn't have to be contrived. It can be something it's pretty natural. So
mhm.
we try to create those memorable moments. So at Sweet and Tender, we had a roaming cocktail cart. So we brought the cart right to your table. We had 6 specialty cocktails that we made right there at the table, right in front of you.
That's
Um,
cool.
Yeah, so those are the things that you want to try. Listen, there's no such thing as copywriting ideas. So
Right.
you see ideas that other people are doing, and it's like that's a great idea. Let me think to how do I make it even better than that, and then call it my own.
Right.
So it's what no difference from speed scratch in a kitchen, where you buy something that's really good, that's as good as anything you can make, and then you alter it to make it your own.
That makes sense. It's a cost. I mean, it's a time saver for sure. I don't know if it's a cost savings, maybe, to to buy it already kind of made. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm not. Let me qualify. I opened a restaurant in New York City, gosh, over 20 years ago with Alain Ducasse, the most celebrated Michelin-starred chef, in the world. And as we're going through the opening and they're doing menu tastings, I watch him pull a demi-glace, that's already made out of a container off a shelf in the walk-in and go to stir it into a sauce. And I go, Chef, you don't make your own demi-glace? And in his thick French accent, he said, "Why would I make something that I can buy as good as anything I can make?" And if you don't know demi-glace, it's you're roasting veal bones, and then you put them into a stock, you deglaze it, you reduce it for a day, and then you strain it and reduce it even more, and it's really labor intensive. And you
Wow.
can buy it. It might be a little bit more expensive, but it certainly cut down on a lot of labor. So why wouldn't you do that? If you can take a 10-step recipe, cut 2 steps out of it, and still come up with the same end result, why wouldn't you do that?
Why would you do that? I've heard of a from a chef that we we're gonna open up something a long time ago, but way before COVID. But she calls it the $1 million spatula, where every little bit counts. So you don't want to leave anything behind. You want to use everything that you can.
Yeah, well, that's training your team to not be lazy. If you throw a bowl on the pot sink, and if you got a spatula and you could scrape 3 extra portions out of it, that's all in training.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Listen,
Well,
as,
she is
as
a
a as a
trainer.
rest, as a restaurant owner that's had a lot of success and a lot of failure, I can tell you, I don't care how good your food is. I don't care how great your beverage is. I don't care how beautiful your room is or how great your service is. If you're not making money, it's not that good. Because at the end of the day, we're a business, and it comes down to. And listen, when I do our consulting gigs, I talk to the owners that are hiring us, and it's like I wear your hat. I know what it's like to have to put a cash call in to cover payroll. I know what it's like to have negative P&Ls, which means not only did you not make money, but you had to put money into the business to keep it open. And I've closed businesses. I had a restaurant with a celebrity chef that I won't name that was open for 6 months. Grand opening, grand closing. It was losing money. And
Oh,
I wasn't willing to put any more money into it. And when I was asked, aren't you going to be worried what people will say? I'm like, not really, because I'm not willing to keep losing money in this venture.
right.
So it is a business first and foremost. And, I always love to, with chefs, yes, it's your art, it's your craft. But if you're losing money every day, then, a
It's
business
not.
can make a penny a day and stay in business forever. It loses a penny a day. At some point, it's going to go out of business.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's really true. I've come up with several concepts in my head, and I've written business plans and got really close right before COVID, and it's really overwhelming, the process of even trying to, well, coming up with the concept, coming up with the food and all that. That's the easy part. That's the fun part. But trying to do the brick and mortar and design, and all the hands and all the people that get involved, it seems extremely overwhelming to me. And you've done it so many times, and you probably have
I've
your
just, I,
checklist. And
oh, absolutely. There's a science behind it. Whether it's doing a pro forma, because what investors want to see long are gone are the 100-page you know business plans that nobody's looking at
yeah.
right now. They want to see 3 things. They want to understand what you're trying to do, so we do that in the concept deck. They want to understand what their money's going to and when they're going to get it back, so you got to do a full financial model for them. And they want to know the team that's going to execute on it. And that's really what it takes. In fact, we're doing a big restaurant, 244-seat restaurant on the strip right now that I can't talk about.
Okay.
But we were brought in, and it's very very methodical. critical path, exactly, what you're doing, how you do it. I just opened my 106th restaurant of my career 2 weeks ago.
What?
Uh, 106.
106? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So,
Congratulations.
but
That's
yeah,
impressive.
that's a combination of restaurants, bars, lounges, nightlife, hotels.
Yeah.
So it's not just a cookie cutter one off, but every time you open, you learn something new. There's not many firsts for me anymore in this industry. I've been doing
Yeah.
this for over 40 years, um, and but when you do an opening, quite often it's like, wow, never saw that before.
That's funny. So, what is it like having to understand and know these different concepts, a hotel versus a bar versus a nightclub? Or, what are the biggest challenges between each one of them? Or maybe even the biggest differences between each one of them? Or is it just a still brick and mortar, food or beverage, concept that but with just, a different audience or a different, purpose?
Well, um, first and foremost, you have to understand your market. You can't go into a market you haven't been before without doing a deep dive and realizing what works and what doesn't work in that market. You can have the greatest concept in the world, but if people don't understand it, it's not that great a concept. And I've learned a long time ago, it's not our job to educate the public, give the public what the public wants. So if you're going to go into a market, let's say in Key West, Florida, and you don't have conch fritters, I mean, that's why they're all over the market. Um, but you can't cram a square into a round hole. So you
Right.
really have to all things have to line up. And I always one of my favorite quotes is success is the result of good judgment. Good judgment is the result of experience, and experience is often the result of bad judgment. And you learn from your failures.
Yeah.
I've had restaurants that I put money into that failed, and you take something away each time that happens. Is what did we do wrong? We had a restaurant with Jeffrey Zakarian in South Beach. We opened up at the Dream Hotel on South Beach, and Jeffrey Zakarian had just won Iron Chef America. He was a judge on Chopped, and we opened this restaurant called Tudor House. Within 3-4 months, 4 out of 4 stars Miami Herald, 5 out of 5 stars Miami New Times. We're high fiving each other and celebrating, and this is great. That restaurant only was open for about 2 years. We overshot the market. Our check average was at about $80 a person. Our check average in that area of Miami needed to be about $40 per person. So,
Wow.
you learn from those things. We overshot the market. We became a special occasion restaurant. And, at the end of the day, to be successful in this industry, the long term growth is going to be through covers, people, not through check average. And that's why our ramen restaurants are so successful. It's a $20 to $21 per person check average. That means you can go in, you can have a drink, you can have a bowl of ramen and an appetizer and walk out of there for $21. That's what So it's a
Wow.
little 62-seat restaurant in Burlington, Vermont, but we do 6 out of 62 seats, we do 300 to 400 covers a day.
Wow. No, that's great. Well, and that's a kind of, is it a fast casual kind of concept where they're kind of in and out pretty quickly?
Well, ramen is easy to
Yeah.
make. It's all about the broth, the noodles. The noodles are minute 34 a la minute, right? So it's a full service restaurant with a full bar. But, if we're not busy, we can turn a two top in 15 minutes, based on the fact that we're not that busy, and ticket comes in, the ramen, the food's out of the kitchen within 8 to 10 minutes.
Wow. Yeah, that's really smart actually. I had Japanese ramen for the first time um in Japan this summer, and it it's amazing. It is just absolutely amazing, but you're right. I mean, we went to the smallest, well, they don't have very big restaurants there anyway, but
Right.
yeah, you're in there and you're out within, at most 30 minutes.
Yeah. And there's a line out the
There's
door.
a line out
People
the
are
door.
waiting.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, that was something very interesting about Japan is you don't really get to make reservations. You wait for everything. We waited an hour in the sun once for sushi. It was really good, but yeah, it's very different over there.
Yeah.
Very different over there. Have you opened anything in Japan or in Asia?
Nope. Just like I said, Mexico
Mexico.
City. I spent 6 months there opening a China grill at the Camino Real Hotel. And then I spent a lot of time in London also with China Grill because at the time, I've been blessed. I worked with two of the, godfathers of boutique hotel world, Ian Schrager and Bill Kimpton. And these guys knew it. They got it like 20 years ago when, it's like hotel people are really good at rooms, but they don't know anything about restaurants. So let's get restaurant people in to run our restaurants and let them integrate and figure out the hotel aspect, and that's why we became, my company Hospitality Alliance, we became, the food and beverage people, hotel food and beverage people, because we understand the relationship, right? I describe it like this, right? The right pocket is the hotel pocket, and the left pocket is the food and beverage pocket, but the pants belong to the same owner. So it's incumbent upon us to work together to make sure that that owner gets a good return on their investment. We're really good at working with hotel operating companies. And, even before COVID, we found that there were a lot of select service hotel owners that wanted to get into the full service hotel program, but they didn't have a food and beverage team. So we became their de facto food and beverage team.
Yeah. Very cool. That is so interesting. Yeah, you get to work with some really interesting people. On that, do you have any mentors or anybody that you'd like to mention that were key to your success, or any kind of, moves or new roles that you took?
I have three. Gus Pappas, who is the owner of the Nautilus Diner in Madison, New Jersey. I worked for him for 4 years through high school. Every Thursday night, Saturday, Sunday day, I worked in this diner, and he just taught me, what it was like. Just, work hard. And I learned at 14 years old, if I'm really fast, not only am I going to turn the tables faster and make the servers more money, but they're going to tip me more and side tip me. So I learned at a very young age, and I loved when the servers start fighting over me to be in their sections. That's something he taught me. Next would be Charles Tobias, the owner of Pussers Rum. I worked for him for 8 years. Charles is, Marine fighter pilot. His whole Marine mentality of let's grind everybody down and then build them up as men. So often I had to jump in front of his bullet to save my managers. But he really taught me about business. He taught me about, the financial end of running the business, not just, it's really good food or really good beverage. I grew from an executive chef. He made me a general manager, and then from there, he made me his corporate director of food and beverage. So I opened 8 restaurants with him all over the world, one in Munich, Germany, 3 in the British Virgin Islands, 1 in the U.S. Virgin Islands, 1 in Annapolis, Maryland, Charleston, South Carolina, Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, and Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And
Nice.
then I left him, and then the third mentor I would say would be Jeffrey Chodorow from China Grill Management. Jeffrey just, his management style was just beyond reproach. He never got angry. In the 5 years I worked with him, certainly taught me a lot about being creative. And really the biggest thing he taught me was sales hides all ills. If you are busy and you do great sales, it hides a lot of operational inefficiencies. It is twice as hard to operate a slow, dying restaurant than it is a busy, thriving restaurant.
Yeah.
And, really teaching me that, most restaurant managers are really good at controlling expenses and managing that stuff, but they don't know anything about driving sales and marketing the heck out of your operations. And that's what he taught me. He was just brilliant at it.
Yeah, I guess it is kind of different skill sets, because just to manage all those people, all those moving parts, you don't have time to think about all these other aspects of it, right? Because your whole goal is just to make sure that when everybody gets there, that they're happy, and to be able to. I would think that would be really hard to have to carry the weight of the marketing aspect of it too. So that's an incredible talent, I would say.
Well, and there's, various marketing aspects. There's the four-wall marketing, and that is, once the people get in the door, how do I sell them more? Through suggestive selling. I hate the term upsell because that just makes me picture the used car salesman that's just trying to make a sale
Yeah.
and doesn't really care if I enjoy my experience. And so the difference is, would the table like bottled water, still or sparkling, or tap? That's upsell. I hate that. Suggestive sell is, can I get the table started with iced or bottled water? right? It's your choice. I don't
Yeah.
feel bad by saying iced, right? And so, I think that,
That's
that hard sell is bad. So the four wall marketing is, how much can you sell within the four walls? Can I get a vodka tonic? Sure. Would you like Grey Goose or Chopin? That's a suggestion. Then there's, the compound marketing, and compound marketing is very simple. If you're really good at what you're doing and the guest has a great experience, they will probably come back and bring other people, and they're compounding now. So now I use, the my very first restaurant, gentleman from Qualcomm comes in, and I meet him. Qualcomm, that really small, you know, technology company with 17,000 employees, and so he comes in. We wowed his experience. He came back with 8 guys a couple of days later. We wowed their experience. 2 days after that, one of the guys that came with him came in with her fiance. They liked it so much that they ended up booking their rehearsal dinner with us for
Oh
60 people.
wow.
So
Oh
that's the
wow, that's a lot of
compound
people.
marketing, right? Well, and if you treat people and they feel good, like Maya Angelou, I love her quote. I've learned that people forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. I mean, that's what we do. We sell experiences,
Yep.
right? We sell
Hmm.
it through food, beverage, music, lighting, decor. But it's certainly an experience because nobody has to go out and spend $100 for a dinner for two. But they want to go out and spend $100 for dinner for two, but they want the whole experience of that.
Right.
And the three pillars in our industry is product, um, energy, and hospitality. So the product is a burger. I don't care if it's a burger. Is it the best burger you can put out? The energy is the room, right? It's the music, the lighting, the decor, the uniforms. That's the energy. And then the hospitality piece, I think, is the single most important piece. Hospitality by definition is warm, personal, engaging service. And it really comes down to that piece. I've never would have I never would have said this when I was a chef, but I'm convinced that I can forgive an overcooked steak. I can't forgive rude or inattentive
Right.
service. And
100%.
so I can tell you, I've gone to places that I've had one of the best culinary experiences, but I'll never go back because the service is horrible. And then I've gone to places where the food's good, not amazing, but good, but the service is so great I go back over and over again.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, do you have any resources, or materials or websites or anything that you'd like to share that helped you through, your career or now or anything that might be available?
Well, I think the shorter answer is no, but the longer answer is become continue to become a student of your craft. I read probably 7 or 8 trade publications that I get every single month, whether it's restaurant business or restaurant industry, beverage magazine. I mean, there's so many out there. So become a student of your craft, and the most important thing I think is market research. That means go out and eat and drink in a lot of different places and see
Yeah.
what other people are doing.
Yeah. And to your point, like make sure the concept fits in the where you're at, that you mentioned not to have to educate the people, get them what they want.
Well, and there's got to be a ribbon of continuity. And let me qualify that. I've gone to places, that I like do the beverage program and the chef ever communicate because you don't want to go into a Japanese restaurant and find 30 tequilas, just like you don't want to go into a Mexican restaurant and find 30 sakes. And I find that happens all the time where you get some beverage manager that never goes into the walk-in and sees what the chef is doing. I make sure my beverage manager and my chef are joined at the hip.
Yeah.
I want the concept to be whether the ribbon of continuity is simply is the music match the concept? Does the uniform match the concept? Does the food and beverage menus match the concept? Does the decor match the concept? And so often I go to restaurants and there's such a disjointed why would they play this music in this concept? And a lot of times it's just a manager that just wants to do what they do. And I will tell you, I probably one of the biggest learning experiences I had. I was a chef in this restaurant in Greenwich, Connecticut, called the Sterling Ocean House, and this was back in, gosh, it was in the '80s, the mid '80s, and I just gotten 2 stars in the New York Times. And, that's big,
Yeah.
back. And so, we saw an increase in business pretty quickly, and it was a seafood restaurant. But I wanted to change the menu and put like sweetbreads and oxtails and stuff like that. And the owner was a great guy, and I kept haranguing him. I want to do this, and he's like, no, run it on special, do whatever you want on special, but the menu's the menu. And, after about a month and a half of me haranguing him, like every time I see him, I want to do this to the menu. Finally, he looks at me, he goes, you want to do the menu your way? He goes, yeah. He goes, you think it should be your menu? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, go open your own effing restaurant. And I'll never forget that. I was like 23, 24 years old. And I just learned at that point, it's like, oh yeah, I get a paycheck from this guy. And so at the end of the day, I learned whoever puts the most money in has the most say.
Yeah.
And the higher you go in the organization, and I always kid my team, and it's like, look, this isn't a democracy; it's a benevolent dictatorship. and and I want to hear all of your ideas, and I want to I don't believe that any of us are as good as all of us, so I want to hear everybody's ideas. But at the end of the day, if it's my check, I'm going to make the final decision.
Right. Yeah. 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 For sure. So, what do you see as your biggest challenges right now?
Labor, staff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could talk to any operator out there, and they're going to tell you the same thing.
Yeah. Restaurants obviously got crushed during COVID for obvious reasons, and they've certainly have come back. But a lot of times when we go out to restaurants, the wait staff it'll be their first week. I can't tell you how many times that happens. And they don't know the menu. They don't know because they're learning. And as people I love food and beverage, obviously, and I love dining. You just feel bad for them because, meaning, the whole restaurant operation, because it's got to be so hard to keep people, not only just get someone hired, but then to keep them. I think that would be such a huge challenge. And when I think about opening a restaurant, I think, are they going to show up today? Am I going to have staff? Like that would be something that I would always be in the back of my head.
Well, first of all, I think, most restaurant team members are smart enough to know that if you don't treat them well, they can go anywhere else and get a job. We are by and large paying between $3 and $5 more per hourly employee, and between $5,000 and $15,000 more for management and chefs.
Yeah.
Than we were pre-COVID. It was always a problem before COVID. After COVID, how many people have pivoted completely out of the industry?
Out of the industry,
And
100%.
To your point of, shame on that owner or manager that let a server go on the floor before they know the menu. I mean, listen, I'm adamant. The more you expect from your team, the more you have to train them. My servers go through a minimum of 7 days prior to ever being able to go in front of a guest, because I expect that they're going to be able to answer any question the guest is going to ask. So, their first days in the kitchen on Expo, learning the menu, circling on the menu every ingredient they couldn't describe to a table, understanding portion sizes and weights. Day 2, they're running food behind a food runner, so now they're getting more food knowledge, and they're now learning the dining room table numbers and seat numbers. Day 3, they go and follow a busser for half their shift to learn where everything is in the dining room. Then they go to the host stand for half a shift to learn the flow of the restaurant from the front door and not the kitchen.
Wow, that's awesome.
By day 4, when they're paired up with a server, they know all about the menu. They know how to answer the phone. They know how to take a message. They know how to seat a guest. They know where everything is in the restaurant. They know the table numbers, the seat numbers. Now they're learning sequence and service in the point of sale system. Then they do that for 3 days, and then we test them out. And if they can't test out, they don't get to go on the floor.
Oh, wow. Like test out, meaning how did they do?
They have to serve the GM.
Oh, wow. You're serious business. That's incredible. You've got it down to a science. That's awesome.
You know why that's so important is because they are your brand. They're your brand to every guest they interact with. And when I go to restaurants of mine and I see a new person that I haven't met, I mean, like clockwork, I go up to them, I introduce myself, I say, thank you for working here. How was your training? How could we improve on that training? I just want you to know that you can work here every day without me. My business doesn't survive one day without you. And, I've got properties in 9 different states. I'm not there every day,
Right.
but they are. And so they are the brand. And like, why wouldn't you train them so that they can represent your brand on the highest possible level?
Yeah. No, that's excellent advice. That's a really cool system, Kelley. That's awesome. I've worked in some restaurants in New York City, and it was never anything to that degree. So that's super impressive. What do you see as your outlook and trend wise? Like, are you adding low and no to your beverage menus? I know it's a really big topic these last couple of years, and seems to has some steam behind it and is really accelerating.
I'm very specific when it comes to our bars. Again, the bars have to mirror the food programming. Number one. Number two, I never have more than 6 specialty cocktails on my drink menu ever, because I find that you go to restaurants that have 12, 15, 25 specialty cocktails, they're not good. Um, I'm adamant that my bartenders use jiggers, and, actually, I want exact pours. Um, and it's no different than having your chefs make a dish over and over again until they perfect it and everybody can do it right. I do the same thing in openings with my bartenders. It's like, okay, you know, and the funny thing is I'm asked all the time when I create menus for concepts, and then the owner will be like, okay, what about the beverage menu? I go, I can't make it yet. Why not? I go, because we haven't hired the bartenders. And because I have my bartenders create our specialty cocktails, and they have six: one gin, one vodka, one
Cool.
bourbon, one rum, and one tequila, and one scotch. So all of the big 6 are in us. All of them are in a specialty cocktail. And when we're training them, it's they get to make cocktails and try me on them. And if it's good enough, then it can be identified as a potential cocktail on a cocktail menu. Then the last key is, can you make it in 30 seconds or less?
Yeah. Oof.
Because if you can't make it in 30 seconds or less, it doesn't go on the menu. Because I don't
Yeah.
need somebody, cocktail's amazing. It took me 2 minutes to make. All the while, everything else is backing up behind me. So it's got to be made in 30 seconds. So figure out how you're going to make, juices or syrups or base spirits to be able to make it in 30 seconds. And then once they can do that, then it goes on the menu. Then I bring all the bartenders together and I'm like, good, all of you make this one cocktail. I line them up. This one, who made this one? It doesn't look like these. Taste it. What's wrong? Great. Throw them out, make them all again. And I'll do that over and over again, 20, 30 times per cocktail, per bartender. So I go through a lot of product in an opening. But you know what? At the end of the day, whether you make it, I make it, or he makes it, it's got to be the exact same.
Yeah.
So that's why I only have 6 specialty cocktails.
I think that's
And the other
great.
thing we do is we make sure that they're all trained on the classic cocktails too, and make it themselves. So I give you an example. I went to a bar here in Las Vegas, and I was sitting there with friends for about an hour and a half, and I had 3 vodka martinis on the rocks with olives. 3 different bartenders. I got it 3 different ways. First guy just poured vodka over ice, put an olive in it, and gave it to me.
Oh.
The second guy made it in the shaker tin, added a little vermouth, which is a classic martini. Added a little vermouth, shook it, strained it over the ice, put in an olive. Boom, that's the martini I want. And the third person just uh, just built the whole thing over and added the vermouth and added the vodka and added the olives all to a glass of ice. So you don't think that the flavor profiles of all 3 of those drinks were different? And so that's where it's
Interesting.
like we train even on that stuff. Like, so typically if somebody orders a martini, vodka or gin, would you like vermouth or not? Right? Because vermouth is part of the martini.
Right.
So a lot of people think a martini is vodka or gin over ice, and that's not a martini.
Yeah. No,
Or
that's not a
or
martini. Yeah. Interesting. Um. So, are you incorporating any low and no alcohols in your concepts, or are you seeing it in Vegas?
No, I mean, I think the mocktail is, certainly something that people are saying is a rising trend. I don't agree. And I tell you why I don't. I don't typically carry, non-alcoholic beer either, because I can buy a case and it'll be there for 4 months.
Yeah.
And why am I going to take up cooler space, right? If somebody comes in and they don't drink, and I say I don't have a non-alcoholic beer, but we've got juices, soft drinks, all kinds of other things, typically they're not going to get up and walk out because you don't have an NA beer.
Right.
And I'd say the same thing with, you don't have to have 6 orange flavored vodka selections, right? I got Absolute, I got Sky, I got Stoli. No, we pick one orange flavored vodka. And if somebody wants, an orange vodka, on the rocks, they're going to drink typically what you have on the back bar. You have to learn you can't be all things to all people.
You can't.
When you go into a market, if everybody's got the same craft beer, it's probably important you put that craft beer on your menu. But you got to study the market. So when we go into a new market, we do a massive deep dive. We go to Google Earth and we chart every single restaurant within a 5-mile radius, including fast food. And then we pick what we believe to be our demographic. And at that point, we do a deep dive into not only what these different restaurants, are carrying. So we'll pick 6 or 7 restaurants we believe to be our competition, and then we chart everything. What do they charge for coffee, bottled water, Tito's, because it's such a big seller.
Right.
So we chart all the pricing because we never want to come out of the market expensive, out of the gate. We always want to make sure we're solidly in the middle of the pricing market, right? We don't want to be the cheapest, but we don't want to be the most expensive.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. So you go to that level of detail. That's interesting. I've never opened one, so I have no idea, but wow, that's so smart. So thorough. So Kelley, when you're not traveling and, working in food and beverage, or, in your restaurants, what do you like to do? Is there a hobby or something that you're interested in that you really like to do to decompress or enjoy yourself?
I do. Obviously, spending time with my family is huge. I have an 8-year-old that's now getting into sports and sports teams, so that's fun. But I would say probably one of my biggest passions is music. I go to live music like it's my job.
Nice.
And living in Vegas, everybody comes through here. So one of the most important things is, getting your yayas out, going to live music. And I'm typically, I go into a GA standing only because I don't want to sit through a concert. And then I play drums. So that's how I get my stress workout.
That's
So
a good one.
I play drums. I have a drum room, a music room in my house. I have over 7,000 vinyl albums that I've been collecting since I was 14.
Wow.
And I have a drum set
7,000?
for my son. 7,000 vinyl albums and over 5,000 CDs.
So how do you have all that organized?
By alphabetized.
Alphabet, not by category or genre.
No.
That's interesting. Wow, that's super impressive. I've never heard of anybody that had that many albums before. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been collecting since I was 14, and now in the digital age, it's funny because people are like, well, why do you have these? I'm like, you know what? I still enjoy it. I still play albums on a turntable.
Yeah, no, there's nothing like it, really. I guess in my time, and I know you got to go, we didn't have turntables really,
Yeah, right.
So it was kind of growing up. I collected some here and there where I could, but yeah, that's really cool because that's it's a timeless thing, right? To me,
it really is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been delightful. Thank you so much for your time, Kelley. Super admirer of yours and all the things that you've been able to accomplish in your career. You're obviously very thorough, very, very good at what you do. And congratulations. And especially on your 106th restaurant opening is super impressive. So best of luck to you. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Next Thursday, I'm speaking with Ben Berman, co-founder and CEO of Tomorrow Farms. Ben, born and raised in Portland, Maine, has always been a food entrepreneur. In middle school, he convinced his high school to pay him $2,500 a year to recruit local chefs to cook meals once a month at his high school. At age 18, he started Mainly Burgers and ended up with 3 trucks and 16 employees, which landed his first celebrity appearance on the Food Network. Ben shifted to consulting at Deloitte, where he learned valuable insights into various business models before attending Wharton, where he received his MBA. This happened during COVID, and Ben turned to his roots and started Good Pizza and gave away 20 pizzas a week for 9 months and raised $100,000, which he donated to a culinary training program for low and no income individuals in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was so popular, he hit the media circuit once again. Instead of returning to consulting, Ben decided to look to the future of food with Tomorrow Farms. Their first project, Bored Cow, is a dairy alternative to milk. It's the world's first fermentation-derived dairy milk. They are feeding DNA sequences of cow's milk to a yeast to microflora and letting the microflora ferment like beer. The result of this process is identical to dairy, but animal-free, lactose-free, and 97% fewer carbon emissions. It's not a new process, as it has been used to make insulin for a very long time. Given the constraints on land and the growing number of people on the planet, Ben wants to use technology to make dairy and beef in healthier and more efficient ways. There is more to come from Ben's team, and I look forward to what's next. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Tune in next Thursday and have a great week. This week's episode was produced by Fedora J Productions.